One of the most serious legal cases in our nation's history was before the courts last week, and what's much more disturbing than the fact that this case is even happening is the appalling lack of coverage that it's been getting, especially from newspapers like the Sydney Morning Herald and The Age, or your very expensive ABC that every taxpayer is forced to pay for, whether we watch or listen to it or not. As we reported last week, whether or not our country is going to fall further across the line of legally forcing speech, an Orwellian concept of the most horrific kind, is central to this case. Your right to call a biological man who presents as a trans woman a man, or to use the she, her pronouns or other preferred pronouns or not, rests on the outcome of this case. You could be forced to call a trans woman she, even if you don't want to. Worse than that, you can be fined for calling them he. Now, just stop and let that sink in for a moment. Certainly, you could lose your job for not complying, at least. The Australian case has caught the attention of J.K. Rowling, who tweeted her support for the businesswoman who's at the heart of this whole thing. The case is, somewhat amusingly, called the Giggle versus Tickle case because it involves the complaint by a transgender woman named Roxanne Tickle against an app called Giggle for Girls, created and run by a previous guest on this show, Sal Grover. But this case is absolutely no joke. In August last year, Sal Grover lost the original discrimination case that was brought by Tickle for not allowing her to join the app because it was for women only. And that was an example of the forced speech, by the way. I am now bound to say her there. Justice Bromwich found that Tickle was indirectly discriminated against and awarded her $10,000 in damages plus legal costs. But that wasn't good enough for Roxanne Tickle. She appealed because she wanted the court to also find direct discrimination, not just indirect, and to award substantially higher damages. She originally was seeking around $200,000. Now I think she's seeking $40,000. Sal Grover and Giggle for Girls then filed a cross appeal, arguing that the original ruling should be completely overturned and that excluding trans women from the app was a lawful special measure under Section 7D of the Australian Sex Discrimination Act, and that the judge erred in his definition of woman and his definition of sex. That is why this case is so very important. So the full federal court hearing last week was dealing with both of those appeals at the same time. My special guest on the show this week is Reuben Kirkin, the founder and director of the Free Speech Union of Australia. Reuben, the most troubling thing about this case is it goes beyond the usual free speech argument, as in the famous case in Canada that shot Jordan Peterson to fame about a decade ago, showed everybody. This is what Peterson referred to as forced speech, right?
Well, it's worse than that. All Sal Grover did was set up a business for basically free discussion amongst biological women who wanted to discuss certain sensitive topics that they couldn't really do with men. So this whole topic of conversation is shut down. It's not just compelled speech. Because, I mean, really, are they going to have an intimate discussion with a bunch of men in there, even if those men say that they are women? It's not really going to fly, is it? So poor Sal Grover's had to spend millions on this and raise millions, and it basically has made it impossible for her to run a business. So if you apparently upset some trans activist who doesn't even want to really use your platform, and that, by the way, was a finding of the court, that Tickle never actually really wanted to use the platform, which is perhaps unsurprising,
Right.
given the nature of the platform. Apparently even that was a basis to allow this litigation to go forward. It should never have been allowed to proceed. It is using discrimination law as a weapon rather than to protect genuinely vulnerable people. And there are people who are subject to genuine discrimination who actually do need these protections.
Yeah,
And it
that's
brings
right.
really important protections into disrepute. So someone can feel special by having the right alliteration of their name or something, or the right pronouns. I'll lose track of whatever it is, but I'll keep adding to it, no doubt.
Well, this is why we see so many members of the gay community outraged by the abuse of the system by the trans community. We're seeing that conflict within the LGBTQ groups themselves at the moment. Anyway, Sal Grover spoke to former Deputy Prime Minister John Anderson on his podcast this week. Let's just have a listen to a bit of that.
Once upon a time, we didn't know that the Earth was round, but we still knew male and female. It was the most basic fact that we've always known. That's how terrifying it is that we're now in a time where people are actually saying we don't know that. There are people every day in this country going to their jobs, knowing that the men in their office are going to be using their bathroom. They're very uncomfortable. Again, I get messages every day about it. Or if they say the wrong thing, they can be punished by their HR departments. They could lose their job. I know why the ABC won't cover this issue. It's because they don't want their audience to know the reality of it. Feels like they're trying to make an example out of you, saying to everybody else, don't you stick your head up.
Oh, I'm sure they.
Yeah.
The process is the punishment.
I've spent 3 years now watching the Sex Discrimination Commission and being like, I just don't know how this works. If you don't know what sex is, well, then why are you here? This is a really serious court case that impacts everybody, because if we don't have these rights to truth and reality, we have nothing.
Sal Grover speaking to former Deputy Prime Minister John Anderson, his podcast this week, worth checking out after the show online. Even the lesbians are not happy, Ruben. The Lesbian Action Group was granted intervenor status in the case, adding more voices to the debate. They're concerned about the implications for women's only spaces as well. Sal Grover's talking about leaving Australia, saying she's going to take the business abroad. The business has suffered enormously. It's a whole other side of this, which is truly tragic. Somebody trying to do a startup and get a business going, and they just get squashed by our ridiculous regulations in this country. Global awareness of what we're doing. It's got to be. It can't possibly be playing well around the world, can it? What's the vibe you get from abroad and other free speech unions when you talk to them about this?
Well, I mean, it makes Australia a laughingstock. I mean, the one relief is how incompetent some of these people are, because it is doing a great job of illustrating how ridiculous all this is. And that includes the E-Safety Commissioner. That includes our so-called Sex Discrimination Commissioner, I think, who's misunderstood her job title, which isn't to discriminate against women. I hadn't quite realised that's what she thought her job title was, but there you go. But it is, at least they are making themselves look like clowns, and hopefully it is going to cause continued international outrage. But it is really troubling that these people have got nothing better to do on, I don't think it's $500,000 a year they get of our money to produce this nonsense, plus all the amount of money they spend on lawyers and all the other activities they engage in. I mean, find something better to do. Go and find something productive to do.
Yeah, I mean, what really bugs me is the lack of media coverage on this. I mean, the Australian covered it, Sky News covered it, we've covered it. Even the left-wing Guardian newspaper, because they're obsessed with identity politics, of course, they covered it. But nothing apparently on the ABC. It was almost zero. Sydney Morning Herald, zero. Age, not there. I mean, it's like they're deliberately too afraid to go there, or they're just ideologically choosing not to go there, possibly. But just amazes me. Even the federal court understood the significance of the case. Last year, they live streamed it on YouTube. So it's just, it's amazing. But there's so many people saying online, that Sal Grover's speaking for them and speaking, one woman wrote, you speak for all of us who are still afraid to speak out. Thank you so much for standing up for women. I wish I could put my name to this. However, it would impact my employment. Many of us are too scared to speak up in case we're cancelled or lose our jobs. And we live in a period of human history where the thoughtful and the intelligent must stay silent for fear of offending the fragile and the stupid. Those quotes in a good piece in The Australian critiquing this really do speak to the fact that, I mean, that's the thing about free speech, isn't it, Ruben? People start to self-censor if they're afraid, and then the baddies have already won.
Well, I mean, do you want a society based on facts, or do you want it based on fiction? I mean, the Soviet society was based on fiction, right? Various fictions that were set up to basically pretend that everything was working well. This is a different set of fictions, but you are required to comply with them. And it's now reached the point where certain newspapers and outlets apparently find biological facts too difficult to talk about. I mean, maybe they all failed biology at school. Maybe that explains the ABC and the Sydney Morning Herald and the Age struggling to cover it. They can't find someone who understands like basic biology or basic facts. That might be their issue they're having. Who knows? But I mean, you should be able to point out a fact, and it's like, even though it's really upsetting, it doesn't matter what that fact is, right? This might be one particular moral outrage being confected, but there's all sorts of different facts out there, scientific facts that that everyone should be able to speak freely about. Otherwise, how do you know when you go to the hospital that the doctor's actually telling the truth?
Yeah, well, I mean, this is the whole thing. It doesn't matter what your view is on trans issues, but biology is biology, and I might choose to call Roxanne Tickle a woman. I might choose to use her and she pronouns if I choose to. But we can't force people to do that. That's the problem. You're going that one step further, which is just too much, as Jordan Peterson said all those years ago when Canada tried to introduce that C16 thing in Toronto, in Ontario. Anyway, all right, enough of that. We better move on. Ruben, I really appreciate you coming on the show. Thanks for your time. And if people want to get into the Free Speech Union, your website, just quickly.
Yes, freespeechunion.au.
Okay.
Thanks for having us along. I'm sure we'll be talking more soon.
Absolutely hope so. Yeah, good to have you back. Keep us in touch on how things are going. That's Ruben Kirkham from the Free Speech Union of Australia. Did you know that with a virtual private network or VPN on your computer, tablet or phone, you can log into your favourite streaming services like Netflix from home with an internet address from anywhere in the world and watch all the shows that they offer in other countries, including stuff in different languages? And using a VPN to route all your internet traffic through a third-party server means that big corporations and big government can't spy on you. If you sign up now with private internet access, we think they're the best VPN servers out there. As a viewer of The Other Side, you can get 83% off the price of your subscription and get online for less than $3 a month. Check it out right now. Go to piavpn.com/otherside. That's piavpn.com/otherside. It's a great service, a rock bottom price, and supporting our sponsor, you are helping to keep The Other Side going and growing. That was a segment clip from our weekly Friday night news show, The Other Side, which you can watch in full by simply going to YouTube and searching up The Other Side Australia. Then you'll find our full shows playlist. You can also find all of our full shows and our segments on our own website, othersidetv.com.au. That's othersidetv.com.au. Help us build a whole new Aussie media by joining us over there and signing up for the exclusive side.